Assistant Minority Leader Pugliese.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Obviously, we spent a lot of time, not as much time as I would have liked to have spent really discussing this bill. And it's difficult for me, being in this chamber, as a person who really wants to make good policy, wants a lot of the same things that you all want. We want to make sure there's housing in Colorado for our people, our constituents. I believe in that too. I don't know what affordable means to all of you, because I think in all of our communities, affordable means different things to different people. So I'm always a little more hesitant to use the term affordable housing, because I don't know what that means in your community, only in what it means in mine. I talked a lot yesterday about process and my disappointment in this process, because as a person that has substantial public policy experience, local government experience, land use experience, I was not part of that process. And I want to pause for a second to say that I truly and deeply admire and respect my colleagues who have brought this bill. And they know, because I've said it often, that those comments are not directed at them. And I'm going to squarely place my comments where they belong, which is at the governor, who I not only asked, but begged for a seat at the table 6 months ago, and was denied that opportunity. And not because I lacked experience, not because I couldn't have contributed in a meaningful way to the conversation, but because elections have consequences, and those are the consequences. And I will say land use, our communities, are not partisan issues. And what I loved about being a county commissioner was that we had diverse perspectives from all across the state. And we all sat in a room once a month and came together, I'm gonna say 98% of the time, around the issues that best served our communities together. Because that was important. That is good policy. And sometimes you just need to put those differences aside. And I'm saddened, I mean, to be perfectly honest, that that is not the way this conversation went. Because I do think there was an opportunity to do this better for all of our constituents across the state. And we no longer have that opportunity. I know yesterday it was said in the well that, you know, when we got a pile of amendments, I sat on that committee that night. It was a long committee. But when we got a pile of amendments, that she knew exactly what was in all of the amendments. And I don't disagree that she did. I can tell you we didn't. And that is not good policy. And then there was as many amendments run in committee as almost the size of the bill. And then more amendments run last night, which I still haven't been able to wrap my head around. And it's just not good policy. I don't care what side of the aisle you sit on, it is just not the way we make good policy in Colorado. I think our people, all of our people, deserve better than that. I would love to sit down with each and every one of you and ask you what this bill means to your community. I don't know that you can answer it, because I know I can't. And I actually live this in my real life outside of this place. But there were so many changes and so many moving parts and so many things that don't belong in this bill. And I can talk all day long from my policy wonk experience about how the Department of Local Affairs has always been a technical support agency, and now you've just created a department within DOLA that is no longer going to be supportive of counties or municipalities, but is going to be regulating and enforcing against them. That is not the way in the history of the Department of Local Affairs that this has ever happened. You also have the Office of Economic Development and International Trade, which has nothing to do with land use, nothing. I still, to this day, cannot find what that connection is, and yet they are now part of this bill. And I would like to have more conversations around that. And I don't have that opportunity, none of us do, to have the opportunity to truly understand what this bill does or the impacts it has on our communities. And we can go out there and leave this building and say, we did something for affordable housing, which is where the bill sponsors are and what they were trying to accomplish, and I think it's admirable. I also want to do something for housing in Colorado, for my people, for your people, for all of our people. But this is not the way. This is not the way we make good policy. And I also, we talk a lot, or I talk a lot, I know we don't talk a lot, about what implementation looks like. After that bill is signed by the governor and hits the street, there are people who have to figure out how to implement this law to be in compliance with our state laws. And I think that's going to be very difficult. I think implementation of this bill and the corresponding amendments, it's going to make implementation difficult. We talk about this as a private property rights bill. And I will tell you, no one believes more in, we all believe in private property. Let me rephrase. We all believe in private property rights in some way. I lived it as a county commissioner. Every time we had a land use hearing, I had to make a decision on my people's private property rights. And I would say to the neighbors who crowded the room, sometimes in hundreds, and I would tell them that if you don't like what your neighbor wants to do on their property, you should buy it. Because that is truly private property rights. And I know I said that in committee, and the response, which was a nice response, thank you, was very complimentary towards me for doing that. But the response was, well, we don't do that in all communities. That is not the state's job to regulate that. I've heard, well, people are afraid of recalls if they make, decisions that their people don't like. Every time we push that button, red or green, we are subject to recall. We are subject to losing our seats. Because when you run for elected office, you have to make decisions. And nobody is going to like it all the time. And as my good friend from Mesa County will attest, when I used to go to lunch, I used to walk down Main Street for lunch, I would allocate an extra half an hour to that walk because 9 times out of 10, somebody stopped me. I'd like to pretend they were all complimentary, but my people would stop me on the street and they would say, Rose, I don't like what you did, or I want you to do this, or why aren't you doing that better or different or more, every time. And you know why? Because when we're talking about local control, I feel like the part that gets missing is it's not about local control, it's about a local government that is closest to the people. Your friends and neighbors that you see in the grocery store who stop you to talk about the decisions you've made. The people that stop you on Main Street that say, I need you to do this for me. That is local government. They are not the enemies. And yes, when you have 300 people coming up to your committee meeting or hearing and saying, I don't want this development, or I want to see it different, all of those voices deserve to be heard, regardless of whether you agree with it or not. And I can't tell you how many people came to the podium and said, I voted for you because I expected you would do this. And my retort every single time was, if you voted for me, this is exactly what you voted for, and you don't need to do it again. Because when we don't care about our next election, when we're actually focused on doing the right thing by our people and good policy, that's what makes us not politicians, but statesmen, which is what I intend, no matter how long I'm here for, to be in the end. This one-size-fits-all does not fit all of our communities. We are a diverse, beautiful, and unique group of communities. And those people should have a voice. We ran an amendment yesterday that said, you know what? If you want the state to take over land use, you should put it to the vote of the people. Let them decide. And it was rejected. And for what reason? We represent the people. That is why we are here.
Assistant Minority Leader Pugliese, you have 1 minute remaining.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've never actually gotten to that point where you've had to tell me I have 1 minute, so I'm going to speed it up. If this is a matter of statewide concern, it should be applied equally across all communities, and that is not what happens when you make exemptions and exceptions and carve-outs in a bill. That is not fair, it's not right, it's not equitable. I've seen affordable housing projects used for economic development. You know what? It's probably not happening in the Metro District because you already have economic development. But that's not the same as the rural communities who are begging for people to come to their communities. And so you're treating them equally. You're treating southeastern Colorado the same as you're treating western Colorado, and the same as you're treating Colorado Springs, and the same as you're treating Denver. And that's not right. That is not who we are as Coloradans. And so with that, I'm going to say that if we truly believe this is a matter of statewide concern, this bill should be modified to include every single
Assistant
community.
Minority Leader Pugliese,
Thank you.
your time is
Exempt Colorado Springs.
Representative